Fix myself. All right, guys, I'm gonna stop playing around with this. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Welcome, you guys. Uh-oh. I be forgetting I'm on. I'm sorry. I be forgetting. I have my napkin. I have my napkin. I be forgetting I'll be on live. But anyways, welcome. We are here for another episode. Another Bible study, another teaching. This is more gonna be more of a teaching than necessarily a Bible study. It will be a Bible study, in the sense of when you go back to make sure like the scriptures that I'm giving you that you're actually taking it in, that you're soaking it in. The one of the best things you could do for any teacher is to take notes. One of the best things that you could do for any person that is in a teaching like environment is that you're taking notes, that you have your journal. As a matter of fact, I hope that you have like a specific journal for a lot of these teachings that we're doing because, again, it is something for you to go back on, it is something for you to think on, it is something for you to ponder on. There are times that even me myself, I go back to listen to certain things because I also am a student, right? There are times where I'm like, I know that wasn't me. I know that was the Lord that said that. And so yeah, we're all students. The best position sometimes is the position of a student. One of the most favorable position is a place of a child. Okay. So we're talking about overcoming family altars. I talked a little bit about it last night on my live. I'm gonna upload it probably today or tomorrow. I'm gonna upload it. So I was live on Facebook and I was live on another platform. And I started the conversation with, it is not you that it is not necessarily you. Sometimes you go through things in life. I just be rambling. Hi, my name is Angela V. Favorite, a sister in the faith. God has blessed me with this ministry called Stand with God, right? Um, and so I just wanted to introduce myself because I just be rambling. I just be going in. There are times you look at your life, or there are times where there are certain defining moments in your life where you're like, this cannot necessarily be normal. Or I don't know if you guys ever had the thought of, I don't understand why I'm going through this. Or am I going through this because of my environment? Or am I going through this because of my family? Right. So there are times where you're going through life and you're starting to ask questions, which is a good thing, right? When you get to the place in life where you're asking questions and you start to ask the questions to God, right? That's a good place. That is a good place because it is in that moment at times that God is able to introduce himself. He is able to come on the scene, okay? I We're talking about family altars, and what I said last night was it is the God in you that is up against the altar of darkness that's in the family. And the reason why I brought this up is because there are times where something seems so insignificant, right? Let's say you are a person and you notice that many people in the bloodline or many people in the family line, they have hair loss. Now from the outside it looks as if, well, maybe this is genetics, right? And that can very much be so. There are some people, their genetics, they are very fruitful when it comes to hair. They don't necessarily see hair loss. And then there are some people that their genetics, they have thin hair in the front or they have thin hair in the back, or maybe they majority of the people in the family is prone to having hair loss in the middle. So I'm just using that as an example. So there is at times where it can be purely genetics. There is that time where it could just be purely health. And then there is at times where it is, in fact, something very spiritual. And it can often be overlooked, especially if it's the norm to see that in the family, if it is the norm to see that within the children, if it is the norm to see that within certain family members. At There are times where things, if you see something often enough, loud enough, right, it becomes the norm. It becomes reality. It turns into a state of true, like a true fact, when in fact it's not. I say this all to say that there are times a person comes to Jesus Christ, right? They give their life to Jesus Christ. And I want to ask you, when you gave your life to Jesus Christ, did everything change? Let's just be honest. Did everything change? If everything did not change, right? However, let's say your state of being changed, maybe how you felt in that moment changed. Maybe it depends on how you came to Christ. Maybe there was an urgency to transform or to remove certain things out of your life. Or maybe there was no immediate transformation and it was a progression thing. There are times that a person, after walking with the Lord for a year, 2 year, they begin to notice like this doesn't seem normal. They begin to notice, why can I, they can't get a job. They begin to notice they can't get, let's say they're married, and one of the people, whether both or just one, they gave their life to Jesus Christ. They're already married, but they notice that they can't have a child. It gets to a point where it seems as if a glass hitting a ceiling is being hit. It gets to a point where it seems as if deep down inside, you know that there's more to life. There's more that you were created for. There was more that you were purposed for, but you keep hitting a glass. It seems like you keep hitting a wall, or you get to a ceiling, a glass ceiling. And when I say a glass ceiling, it's as if you are about to push through the ceiling, but once you get to the ceiling, that's when you notice you're hitting a glass. There gets to a point where you realize, why is it that every time the kids get around a certain age, this happen? Or I every time somebody gets married, this happen. Every time somebody graduate, just about to graduate high school, this happen. Or it can mean even after a person graduate high school, you notice, wait a minute, why does this seem to just continue to happen? Sometimes the shift can be that, hey, something is here that don't quite seem normal, and a lot of times this happened when you probably started to go to college, or you notice somebody else, they get to college and it seems like there's a deviation. This at times can show that there is a family altar at play. Now, before I get into breaking down the altars, right? Breaking down what that means, breaking down what a family altar is, I want you guys to understand that Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. It's going to make sense once I get through the teaching. All right. And also, I want you guys to understand that you, your prayers are sacrifice. Your praise is sacrifice. Your prayers is sacrifice. Your thanksgiving is sacrifice. Okay. Now, let's talk about altars. Now, the very first time we see anything in regards to altars is We see this in, it's not the first time, but in the book of in Abraham and in Genesis, we see that Abraham builds an altar to God. Okay. Now, when Abraham does this, let me go to, give me a second, guys. Oh, wow. I thought I wrote it. Let me go to my notes. Interesting. So I'm going to wing it. So in Genesis chapter, I believe it was chapter 11. I'm going to wing it. Um, Okay. In Genesis chapter 12, right, starting at verse 7, it says, Then the Lord appeared to Abraham, and he said, To your descendants I will give you this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord, who had appeared to him. I'm going to stop there. What is an altar? So there's several definitions to an altar. One of the definitions to an altar is a place of communication where humanity meets divinity. So that means humanity, which is a human person, builds something, right? It puts something on the altar, whatever the sacrifice is, spices, oils, whatever it is, animals. So in the excuse me, in the Old Testament, it was a lot of animals. There were particular rules and regulation when it came to that. And it is a place for them to communicate with divinity. So, in the case of Abraham, it was the living God. So, that was a way for Abraham to communicate with the supreme God. Now, I want you guys to understand this same spiritual principle is used with another person that our living God is not their God. So if they are worshiping another deity, if they are worshiping a demon, they will also build an altar to what? Be able to communicate with that particular deity. So that's one definition. The second definition is it is a custodian for spirits, right? It is a custodian for spirits. Now, I want to break this down. When a person it is operating in darkness, when something is operating with familiar spirit, it is a custodian, it is a holding place for familiar spirit. However, as believers of Jesus Christ, because of the new covenant, because we believe in Jesus Christ, we don't build any altars. Why? Because the ultimate sacrifice, which was Jesus Christ, was sacrificed on that altar. Okay. So this is where you see Hebrews 10:10 come from, where it says, by we will, which we will are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. So when it says once and for all, that means that we don't build any altars anymore. However, our life is a temple, right? So our praises is a sacrifice. So it when you think about when you're moving from Old Testament to New Testament of why we don't build it, why Christians don't have to build any altars anymore, because we already have the ultimate sacrifice, which is Jesus Christ. That is one. And you see the Lord, because of the grace and the faith in Jesus Christ, he moves from a law thing to a inner thing. So on the outside where you're able to move, where you were able to communicate with a divinity or a divine power, you no longer need to do that. Why? Because as believers of Jesus Christ, once we confess, once we believe, the next thing is we pray for the Holy Spirit. So that was the thing that was behind the scenes in the Old Testament, of the reason why you had the prophets, you had the messengers, you had the servants of God, where they either had to go through a they were, the way that they heard the voice of the Lord was through a prophet or a leader, or it was they may have had a radical encounter and they heard the Spirit of God, or if a person wasn't in God, they serviced an altar. They serviced something to be able to speak to deities and demons and stuff like that. Now, we we have the ultimate flex. And the ultimate flex is we can reach out to the Holy Spirit. That's the ultimate flex. That's the thing that they were not able to do in the Old Testament. And they had to go through all of these ceremonies, and they had to go through all of these rigorous rituals to be able to hear God. And it was and the altar was a key component, a part of that. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 and 2 says, "Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also hath loved us and hath given himself for us an offering," not only an offering, a sacrifice to God for what? A sweet smelling aroma. This is going to make sense. The reason why this is going to make sense is in uh Genesis chapter 12, verse 7, it talked about how the descendants, it says, "To your descendants, I will give you this land." And there he built an altar to God who appeared to him. That was a way to communicate, was through an altar. Numbers chapter 27, right? That was another set of altar. This was with Balak and Balaam. And in Numbers chapter 23, it shows you another definition of an altar. I'm gonna go there real quick. And it says, this is when Balak was trying to trick Balaam for him to curse the children of God, because he saw that the children of God was too mighty in the land, and he wanted them to stop prospering. He wanted them to stop flourishing. And so he tried to trick this Balaam to say, "Hey, I need you to speak something over these people so that they could stop prospering and so they could stop multiplying in the land." Numbers chapter 23, it says, "Balaam said to Balak, build 7 altars for me here and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams." Because every altar needs a sacrifice. Every altar needs an offering. And Balak did just as Balaam had spoken. And Balak and Balaam offered a bull and a ram for each altar, on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, "Stand by your burnt offering, and I will go. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you." So that goes to the definition that I was saying. That is a place of communication between humanity and divinity. That is also a place where it is a custodian of familiar spirits. So the altars holds familiar spirits to be able to speak. When you're talking about a person building an altar to basically, inquire of some divine spirit, or inquire of some, deity or demon that they're servicing, right? The reason why I want to put emphasis that it's a little bit different, because in the New Testament, you really don't see altars anymore. Why? Jesus Christ. However, in Revelation chapter 12, I believe it's not, it's not here. I'll try to put it in the comments. I had it in my notes. There it goes. There is another type of altar, but this altar has a completely different definition. It is in Revelation chapter 16, verse 7. And it says, "And I heard another out of the altar." So it heard a voice out of the altar. "Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgment." Here, the altar meant that this is the altar of burnt offering, which stood in the court of the priests in the temple of Jerusalem. The altar of incense, which stood in the sanctuary of the holy place. It was a different type of altar, basically saying, hey, it is speaking to the true things and the judgments of God that was happening in the book of Revelation. Okay, so there's that. So now that we got that out of the way, okay, now that we have that out of the way, what does this have to do with a family? This has a lot to do with a family. Give me a second. Pop, Pop, bring me my laptop bag. I didn't realize I printed, so y'all give me a second. It's by the dinner table. Dinner table, by the dinner table. And put some gloss on. Stay right there. Stay right there. And then close the door for me. We started it. I already started it. 'Cause I didn't realize I printed out. I didn't print out everything, and but I still have it on my laptop. So let me just go to the notes real quick. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Some more examples of altars um is Genesis chapter 8 from 20 to 21. It says, "And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took clean animals and offered offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet aroma." Now the reason why I wanted you guys to hear that, um and the Lord said in his heart, "I will not again curse the ground." So this was after the flood. So after the flood, Noah built an altar to God, and the Lord smelt a sweet aroma. And then the Lord said in his heart, "I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth." The reason why I wanted to bring this up was because in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 to 2, when it says that, "And he hath given himself for an offering and sacrifice to God for a sweet swelling smelling aroma," that lets you know that whenever an altar is somewhere, whenever somebody builds an altar, whenever somebody gives a sacrifice of praise, because of Ephesians, it is as if it's a sweet aroma. Now, Jesus Christ being offered on the sacrifice, being offered as a sacrifice and an offering, was symbolic to the Old Testament, where the rules were, hey, in order to be in communication with God, you had to prepare, you had to make the place holy, you had to make everything around it holy. This is why when Moses came on the scene, Moses had so much rules about, hey, you know, before you go try to go before the presence of God, you have to make sure that it's holy, you have to make sure that it's clean, you have to make sure that not everybody can touch everything. This was one of the reasons why Aaron's sons drop dead. Okay. Uh, So that's in Leviticus 10 verse 1, where it says Aaron's son Nahab and Abu dies because they tried to ignite an altar with the Lord with strange fire. Now what I found so interesting is in Leviticus chapter 9, they was around Aaron and Moses. Like they saw the proper way to do an altar. They saw the different preparation. They saw all of the rules. Yet and still they try to do things in their own hand. In Leviticus chapter 10, and it said that means that they were into some stuff that they had no business being into. They tried to ignite strange fire, and that strange fire got them dead. So this is the reason why, and you see how God moves into no, what he wants is our heart, meaning that he wants to make sure that, hey, are you giving me worship in spirit and in truth? Where's your mind when you're praying to God? Where is, what is your thoughts? What is the thing that, do you come to him with a heart of repentance? Do you come to him with a heart of humility? Or do you come into his presence with gimme, gimme, gimme? So we have to kind of check that. Now, why does this matter? This matter is, remember in the beginning of my video, it says that after you gave your life to Jesus Christ, everything then just miraculously changed. And for some people, they start to notice things earlier than later, right? I was one of those people that noticed stuff earlier than later, but I also went through a season where I was disobedient. And so I am a person that can speak to the consequences of disobedience, because disobedience can absolutely turn into rebellion. Now, the reason why I say some people, it is not necessarily, it is something deeper that they're fighting. And how this is how I can, a lot of times people who are fighting altars within their families, that is speaking up against them, because altars can speak up against people. If altars is able to show, if the Lord is able to see or is able to smell a sweet aroma, is that if the Lord is able to basically pick up a sweet aroma, if it says in Genesis chapter 8 from 20 to 21, it said the Lord smelled a sweet savor, meaning that the altar speaks. The altar can give sweet, savory smells, or it can give strange fires. The same principle allow the same principles is the same from a person who has building up an altar and they're servicing their family idols, they're servicing their family deities, they're servicing their culture or tradition, and it is their culture or tradition, some of the practices and the things that they're doing is totally opposing God's way. So an altar can definitely speak. Now, how you can tell if it's a altar from your family that is speaking up against your life is because what I have noticed is some of the most pivotal points is when you see the altar manifest. Some of the most pivotal points. So, for instance, if there's an altar that is protecting a family to keep the family in bondage, to keep the family in idolatry, to keep the bloodline in witchcraft, to keep the bloodline and fornication, to keep the bloodline in adultery, to keep the bloodline where nobody has success, to keep the bloodline from nobody not able to graduate, no one's is able to graduate college, to keep the bloodline where they are able to get success. However, they're not able to get married, they're not able to have children, to keep the bloodline in constantly violence and spilling of blood. That means that there is a family altar that is there. That's all that means. That means that there's an altar in that family lineage or that bloodline that is speaking up against a person. And many times You see that the altar begins to speak up against this particular person's life. This person has given their life to Jesus Christ, but something's still not quite like you're doing everything possible. You're doing everything possible, but there's certain areas that you notice is mimicking somebody that's 30, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years older than you, but you're like, wait a minute, how is this happening? It is happening because the the times that you can see that it is a family altar that is speaking up against a believer's life is when a person gets married. It is when a person is graduating. It is when a child is being born. It is also when tangible wealth is supposed to be acquired. I'll say that again. When tangible wealth is supposed to be acquired or an inheritance is supposed to be passed down, this is when you will see if there is a family altar that is still operating in the bloodline. That means, and a lot of times some people will say, well, how is it still being able to operate? Somebody is servicing it. Every altar is different. Every altar is not the same. There's a lot of things that can service it. And when I say service, I mean something is being offered on the altar. Something is being sacrificed on the altar, whether it's spiritually or whether it's physically. But the many times that you can see that it's manifesting is in one of those pivotal moments. So when inheritance is supposed to be passed down or when tangible wealth is supposed to be acquired. I'll give you an example. There are some people in their bloodline, every time a believer, this person has given their life to Jesus Christ, and they have worked hard, and they have acquired wealth. Right when they acquired wealth, that is when it's taken away from them. How is it taken away from them? That is when you see that that's when you see them being a giver to everyone in the family. That is when you see they become the caretaker. That is when you see them beginning to take on unnecessary burdens that they have no business taking up. But they don't realize, no, this is something that has been going on in the family for ages, way before they came. But they are not keen to understand, wait a minute, hold on. This is a blood-sucking spirit. How does this look like? This looks like when a believer of Jesus Christ, right when they are, let's say that they are the first person to get married amongst the cousin. Let's say that they are the first person to get married amongst the men. They are the first person to get married amongst the women. They are the first person to get married in that generation. Remember, every 40 years, a new generation starts, typically. Every time you see 40 years has passed, right about, so a little bit before or a little bit after or right on the money, that's when a new generation recycles in a bloodline. And so if that person is the first person in the bloodline to get married, that is when, if there's a family altar that does not allow people to get married, that does not allow people to graduate, that does not allow people to be able to acquire some wealth, that is when that altar will rise up to speak against that person. Again, this thing is happening for people who has given their life to Jesus Christ. I'll take it up a notch. Whenever someone is the first person to give their life to Jesus Christ in that generation, the altar within the family that says that, no, we don't like the fact that these people be getting saved because they be tearing up a muck. We don't like the fact that these people are following God because they begin to destroy things that keeps the bloodline in oppression, that keeps the family lineage in oppression. This is the reason why when you read some of the scriptures in the Bible, it said that every generation they were very adamant about teaching every new generation what the Lord had done for them, for the children of Israel. They were very adamant about teaching them the word of God. They were very adamant about telling them, hey, this is what God has done. that means that there's an altar in the family that's speaking up against that person's life. When it seems like things is unnormal and things cannot be spoken for, there's an altar within the family. Now, I want you guys to understand that you can overcome it. I want you to know that there's scriptures that shows that I don't care what is in the family line and what is like right now. There is a lot of family altars that are speaking against believers because there are believers who don't believe that these altars are looking for a almost like a reconnection. It's looking for to be rehearsed, perpetuated, recycled for some. Now, some people, they had people in their bloodline that destroyed these things. And so they no longer have to worry about that. But they do have to make sure that they maintain their relationship with Christ. They do have to make sure that they maintain there are certain things that they always look out for. Because you got to understand, even if the enemy loses one, two, three generation, it's always looking for a way to reintroduce itself to another generation that does not know their God. Always. I want you guys to understand that you can overcome it. So if you are a person and you're like, wait a minute, I you believe that, wait, this sounds like something that you're going through. This is, or it sounds like someone, something that you have witnessed. I want you to understand that you can overcome it, and we're going to go through how you can overcome any family altars that is trying to speak against anybody in your family or your life, that is trying to reintroduce itself, or that is you didn't realize was operating this entire time. And so we're going to talk about how you can destroy it, and we're going to talk about how you can overcome it. Acts chapter 7 verse 4. This summarizes what a believer must overcome when they come from a family line or a bloodline, and there are altars within the family line or the bloodline that continues to speak against the believers, that continues to speak against the family members and the bloodline. Now, one of the ways you can see is when, let's say, you are the first person to graduate. Let's say you are the first person to get a college degree. Let's say you are the first person to get married. Let's say you are the probably the third, the fourth, the fifth person to get married. Let's say you are the person to introduce a boy in a very long time in the family. You are the person to introduce a girl in a very long time in the family. Let's say you are the person, the first person that actually the Lord was with you to do a faith move and to get a business. Let's say that you are the first person to go out on faith and leave your family's house, leave the country, leave the city that you know, leave the environment that you know, leave the country that you know, to go to a place where the Lord said that He will bless you, that He will keep you, right? Let's say you are the first person to be a part of something that was very big, very grand, very public. Maybe you are the first person to enter into the music industry, or you're the first person to enter into the Hollywood industry. You're the first person to get into banking. You're the first person to pay off all your debts. You're the first person to travel the world. Whatever your first is, maybe you're the first person to get a passport in your bloodline. How does it look? How will it look? It looks like the matriarchs and the patriarchs becoming jealous. Maybe you're the first person to openly talk about you having a dream, like Joseph did. And what happens is with those people, usually God give them favor and wisdom from strangers, and whatever that they put their hands to prosper. What does it look like? It looks like you're the very first person to come out from amongst a city where where opportunity is scarce, business is scarce, money is scarce. What does it look like? It looks like you are a person that was born during a critical time in your family. And the reason why you were born was to fulfill a promise that you know nothing about. Or maybe you do know about it and you're ignoring it. Or maybe you don't know about it. What does this look like? This looks like you are a person that was born in an environment, that was born a part of a system that the Lord, will use you to eventually go back to confront that system, just like he did with Moses. Now, I want you to understand. So some people say, well, what do you mean there's an altar in my family? There's no altar in my family. Please do not be prideful. Please do not be one of those people that just become ignorant and you don't know what these people did back then. You weren't born. You don't know what they were doing. You only hear recollection. And even then, you got to scrutinize because you weren't there. So how would you know what these people did or did not do? I want you to understand, why would, some people would say, well, why would let's say you come from a family line and people everybody got saved, so you think. Or you came from a family line, people just did what they wanted to do. You came from a family line, everybody nuck if you buck. You came from a family line, people did idol worship. You came from a family line, people dabbled a little bit of this, dabbled a little bit of spell work, dabble a little bit with shadow work, whatever it is. I want you to understand, why are why are altars created in a family line in the first place? The reason why these things are created in the first place is, I think you always have to ask. That's like asking a person, that's like you saying, well, why would a person want to do drugs? Well, you need to go back to what's the foundation of it. Some people go to do drugs because they're trying to escape a reality they don't want to be a part of. Some people do drugs because it's a false sense of comfort. They're looking for comfort. They don't have any peace. Whatever situation that they're in, they don't have any peace. So if you look at what a reason a person would go and do a certain thing, then that can give you, why would a person want to create an altar in the family? Well, some people in the former generation, they did it to avoid a famine or a drought. Some people did it for power. Some people did it for a supernatural answer. Remember how Balak and Balaam, it said that perhaps I'll go to God and he may answer. Now think about every other chapter or every other story in the old, especially in the Old Testament, where you saw that the Lord directed a particular person in a family line to cut down the altar of Baal, to cut down the altar of Asherah, to cut down a particular altar that was sacrificed to a deity or that was sacrificed to a demigod. Some people, they did it. It was they somebody in the family probably created an altar because they wanted protection. Some, it was for justice or injustice. Some, it was to promote a bloodline to move forward. This is where you see in particular tribes, or you'll see in particular culture where they promote incest because they want to, that is a way for them to keep everything intact in the bloodline. It's ill, it's yuck, but the Bible shows that they did it. And believe it or not, today there are still some people, there are still some cultures that continue to believe it. So why would a person of the former generation create an altar over a family? Was it maybe to have children? Maybe something happened in the past, and because of that, they decided to go another route. And then, in order to continue for that to continue to happen, they say that, okay, well, this altar is going to continue to be serviced in this particular family line so that children can be promoted. Some it was to create marriages. Maybe marriages were dying off. Some it was to get influence. Uh, the most clearest way sometimes to see a family altar is when you see a family line is full. And it's not all the time, guys. I'm just saying that's an example. Sometimes the family line, it has an altar that is that's behind the scene, and that is the reason why that family line is able to get into politics. And I'll leave it as that. How do you overcome family altars, right? So how do you overcome it if you see this is happening? First, you have to recognize. If you're one of those people and you recognize it, that's already there. God is showing you what he wants you to do. If you're able to recognize it. Number two, if the Lord finds a way to reveal it to you. All right. I'm sorry, that's still a part of number one. Number two, when you recognize or the Lord reveals it to you, the second thing for you to do is remind the Lord of his word for the matter. So, whatever it is that you see, right? Whatever it is that you see. Uh, so for me, I recognized really early that there was a particular gender in my family that they weren't getting married. I just noticed it off of a whim. And when I noticed it off of a whim, I went to God about it. And what the Lord revealed to me at the time, it wasn't favorable. At the time, it seemed like it was a lot. At the time, it seemed as if, are you sure, God? At the time, I listen, okay? And so one of the things to do is to remind the Lord of his word regarding the matter. So whatever you got to understand, sometimes the way to recognize or the way that it can be revealed is when you see an altar is at place. That means that it's hardly it is guarded. It is protected. And so I want you to start looking at some areas of your life where it seems, or some areas even in your family where you're like, wait a minute, this thing looks really guarded. It seemed like nobody was able to overcome this. Why is nobody was able to overcome it? Or the people that did try to overcome it, it seemed like they fell to the wayside. So whatever it is in particular that seems to be so guarded, right? And the Lord reveals to you like, hey, there is an altar at play in your family, in your bloodline regarding that. I want you to remind the Lord his word regarding the matter. So that means that you're going to have to find scriptures in regards to the matter, right? In my case, I look for scriptures regarding marriages. Your case, it may be fertility. Another person case, it may be possession. Another case, it may be inheritance. It's not able to pass on to the next generation. That is something serious. Inheritance, if somebody has acquired wealth or inheritance, it should pass from generation to generation to generation. It should not fall to the wayside. Number three, this is very important. You must believe that the Lord is with you. There's many people that they talk about the scriptures, but they don't believe the Bible. If you're watching us, I hope you're not one of those people. I seriously hope you are not one of those people that you read this word, that you read the word of God. Scratch all that. that God has consistently showed up in your life, and yet and still you don't believe that the Lord is with you. So, number three, you must believe that the Lord is with you to overcome this. You must believe that the Lord will stand with you to win this. You must believe that the Lord will deliver this thing onto you. Number four, dedicate your house, which is your family, including your spouse if you have a spouse, to the Lord. Dedicate it. Side note, did y'all know that the King's language, part of the King's language, when they wanted to address or identify a family lineage, they will say the house of etc. etc. They will say so. They'll say the house. I'll just use a fictitious name. So the house of Smith, the house of favor, the house of blessing. If your last name's Blessing, so it was a way to identify an entire a dynasty. It was a way to identify a family lineage. It was a way to identify a bloodline, the house of David. Examples of this is Genesis chapter 20, verse 18. It was the house of Abimelech. Exodus chapter 2, verses 1. It was the house of Levi. It was a way to identify a the that a dynasty was continuing, or a corporate identity of a family. So that was a way to identify a family line or a bloodline. It represents the reigning family as a permanent legal entity holding lands, titles, and bloodline. This is why it's very important that you discern if you see that in your family line that wealth is acquired but it's not able to be passed on within the family. It's not a or land is acquired, inheritance is acquired, possession is acquired, and it's not able to pass on. It gets squandered. That is a sure sign something's going on in that family line. King's language and kingdom language is very similar. I just wanted to put that. So I want you to dedicate your house. I don't care if you're the only person, you're the first person to get saved, or it's a small number of y'all, maybe three, maybe five of y'all, maybe seven of y'all in the entire family line or bloodline in the generation. Dedicate your house, which is your family, which is your home, which is your possession, which is your family line, from you moving forward, dedicated to the Lord. In New Testament, you see it, but it changes a little bit. Like the verbiage changes a little bit, right? So in Acts chapter 18, verse 8, it says, believe on the Lord with all his house. The house, be mindful that not every time you see the word house in the Bible means that it's referring to a family line. Like there's specific context and verbiage around it. Okay. First Timothy 5, verse 8, it says, for those of his own house, family lineage. So God is in the business of saving family lines. Okay. All right. How can you overcome it? Number five, declare the Lord is peace over yourself and over your house. This is what the Old Testament called a peace offering. This is showers of thanksgiving to the Lord. You call on the Lord and you give him thanksgiving. Do y'all not understand how powerful? Do y'all not understand, first of all, that thanksgiving is prayer? Not only is thanksgiving prayer, but thanksgiving is also a weapon in any war, in any battle. Not only that, it is also a sacrifice unto God. Not only that, it is a way to declare peace over your home. How is this done? This is done through fellowship of thanksgiving. This is done through gratitude. Some of you guys are very unappreciative. Some of you guys, you need to repent for not having enough gratitude. You're not thankful about anything. You're not grateful about anything. Something good happens in your life, and instead of acknowledging the good that happens in your life, you continue to rehearse all of the bad that happened in your life. You continue to rehearse, oh, well, your mother wasn't there, or your father wasn't there, or you were in this particular situation, or you was in a wrong relationship, or that you was in a wrong job, or that you was in the wrong environment. You rehearse everything that's bad, but not one time do you have a position or do you have a mindset of thankfulness, a mindset of gratitude. And you wondering why certain thing continues to perpetuate in your life. So declaring peace over your home, it is also, you do it through fellowship. You do it through gratitude. You do it through communing with God with thanksgiving. Do you know how that feels? Have you practiced that? Do you understand what that means? To have a heart of thanksgiving, despite the circumstances. Having a heart of thanksgiving helps you to overcome whatever altar that is speaking in the family against whatever you are at in life right now. I want you to start practicing thanksgiving with God. Start practicing appreciating God. Okay, you may have not gotten the job that you have, but you still have a job. Let's say you don't have a job, but God still makes a way. God still finds and locates people to pray for you, to intercede for you, to call you up to say, hey, you was on their mind. And they said that, hey, you know what? Um, let me send you some groceries. Let me send you a love offering. Even the prayers that you think that the Lord has went silent on, man, just this week alone, just this week alone, there's I have some prayers where I just kind of wait for God to just answer it. Like, it's not that I stop praying about it, it's just that I'm like, okay, God, it's in your hands. It's in your hands. I believe it's in your hands. And I'm gonna leave it there. Just this week alone, the Lord put it on the heart of a ministry that I did not know, that I still don't know. I don't even know these people's name, but the Lord put it on their heart to intercede for me. And all I could do is say, Lord, I thank you. I thank you. This is God of the impossible. This is God. That's why you have to. This is why number 2 is, do you believe in the Lord that he is with you? I want to emphasize here is that as believers of Jesus Christ, we don't need to build an altar. That's the whole purpose of Jesus Christ. Okay? Wherever you go, you give sacrifices of praise. Wherever you lay your head at, you give sacrifices of worship. Whenever it comes to your mind, you give sacrifices of prayers. All right. Number 6, keep your mind focused on what God instructed you to do. What did God tell you to do in regards to the matter? When you recognize it or the Lord revealed to you, like, hey, it's something going on. It's in the blood. It's in your blood. What did he instruct you to do? You can't say he did not instruct you to do. What did he instruct you to do? Look at what he instructed Gideon to do with the family, the altars that was in his bloodline. If you guys want to see a clear view of maybe a blueprint or a strategy, look at Judges chapter 6. Look at what God told Gideon to do. I also want you to pay attention to how he didn't address Gideon whenever Gideon brought up what his former generations did. Number 7, do not get stirred up or provoked to do a thing that God did not tell you to do, or you will reap the fruits of the consequences. What does this look like? What did God, and the instruction that God told you to be able to overcome the family altars that's in your bloodline, He would have told you certain things to do. That is why you're supposed to get your direction from the Lord. And that's why you're not supposed to get your direction necessarily from a prophet or a man of God or a woman of God. Why? Because sometimes they can know in part, see in part, but not only that, not everybody will be able to attack certain things the same way. Some people, the Lord will use what is in their hand. He will use what's already in their hand. So you want to be careful not to get stirred up because you trying to do something that is out of the will of God for your life on how to overcome something that's been plaguing your bloodline. Come on now. You can reap the fruits of the consequences. I want you to read First Chronicles 21. Now this is talking about what David went through, but if you read the entire chapter, read the very first sentence. It said Satan incited him. To incite means to provoke, to stir up, to put little seeds in his ear. This is why it is very important, especially if you're going on a journey, to overcome what a previous generation could not do, to overcome certain people in your bloodline or family line could not do. It's very important that you are very careful who you listen to. You are very careful which aunt you're getting advice from. You're very careful which uncle you are getting advice from. You are very careful which grandmother, which grandfather you're getting your advice from. It's very careful who you are under. It is not only in your family life. This is also, you see this in corporations. So if it's so, the picture is there for in every area of your life. That's why it is very important who you sit under. It is very important what pastor you are under. It is very important what church that you are under. It's very important to who you lend your ear to. Because sometimes I have seen that the person that you are lending your ear to in a family, thinking that they are a Christian, thinking that they are a good person, thinking that, oh no, this person is the one that looked out. They are the very person that is making sure that the altar is continuing to service and that the people are under oppression in that bloodline. It is very important that you be careful who you are listening to that is telling you, oh, well, don't move out of the city. Don't move out of the village. Don't. You got to bring money back to the village. You got to bring money back to the family. Don't go beyond this hut. Don't go beyond this land. Oh no, we don't go over there. Be careful. Number 8, use what's already in your hand. The Lord will utilize what's already in your hand. Some people be doing some really stupid stuff. They listening to this person and that person and this person that looks like sounds so braggadocious. This person is speaking in tongues. They tongues sound like they setting off artillery. But when you break it down, the Lord told Gideon before he went and cut down the altars that was in his family. He said, "Go in this your strength." Gideon had, that was the thing that he already, God already had given him. It was already in him. So what is already, God is going to use what's already in you. So maybe it's your boldness. For some, maybe it's their intelligence. For some, maybe it's their wealth. For some, maybe it's their prayer. They are a person that prays. For some, maybe it's their worship. For some, maybe it's strategies. They are a person that they strategize. They come up with great roadmaps and great maps. God is going to utilize to overcome the altars that's in your family. He's gonna utilize what you already have. Number 9, God will use you to tear down the altar that your father, which is your paternal side, and cut down any supporting altars beside it. So that could be your maternal side, or that just could just be supporting. Okay. And so how does that look? That looks like he allows you to tear down the altar that doesn't allow people to graduate. Maybe you are the person that maybe God you will use you to tear down. Maybe it's the altar of fornication. Maybe it's the altar of adultery. Maybe it's the altar of idolatry. Maybe it's the altar of witchcraft. Maybe it's the altar of people not being able to have businesses. Maybe it's the altar of people acquiring health legally. Maybe it's the altar of people not being able to have a standard when it comes to the things of God, when it comes to the ministry of God. Maybe God will utilize you as the first person to bring, uh, to clear up the priesthood back into the bloodline. Maybe God will use you to cut down the altar of infertility, cut down the altar of boys not being able to be born into the family, or girls not being able to be born into the family. Maybe God will use you to cut down the altar of people not being able to go to medical school. Maybe your family line came from a family line of people. They were physicians, they were practitioners. And when I say practitioners, I have to put the little caveat. I'm talking about healthcare field guys, healthcare. Maybe it's entrepreneurship. Maybe uh, you had inventors, people who invented things, and at some point it cut off. And so maybe God is utilizing you to cut whatever the altar is that is heavily protected, heavily guarded. Maybe it's marriages. Once you tear it down, because you will tear it down, baby, that's why you got to be on God's side. God has never lost a fight. You got to be on God's side. God has never lost a fight. Once you tear it down, I want you to be prepared, right? And so if you notice, all of the things was preparation. Before we get to the point of tearing down, this is all the things that God will take you through. Once you tear it down, the Lord will have you to build an altar on top of the stronghold. It's not a physical altar that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is what I said about dedicating your house to God. What does this look like? This looks like in the realms of the spirit and in the physical, you put a stake in the ground and making a firm and public commitment, establishing a clear position that, hey, we have taken claim. As for this house, we have taken claim for the Lord. As for this marriage, we have taken claim for the Lord. As for our wealth, we have taken claim for the Lord. As for our health, we have taken claim for the Lord. Nobody in the family line was able to stay healthy. That junk stops. Not on our watch. We have taken a stake for the Lord. Maybe it's whatever it is. I don't know what it is. But whatever it is that the Lord is showing you, once you tear it down, make a stake right over that stronghold. Make a public declaration. That's why sometimes some people's wealth is the public declaration. some people favor is the public declaration. Number 10, I put fearful obedience because I was referring this to Judges chapter 6 where Gideon was afraid of his family because hey, oh, some people family like they family line depend uh, and it showed that he was fearful because that must have been something that was there for a very long time, for some generations, right? And so some people, depending on what it is that the Lord revealed to them, right? I want you to still operate in obedience. So I took the part of where Gideon did it at night instead of during the day. Some people they have the grace to put their stake in the ground during the day, right? So meaning in public and in front of everyone, and they are not phased by it, right? Some people, depending on what they are overcoming, they have to do it at night. So it doesn't matter as long as you are obeying God. So if you're afraid to do it by day, raise up the prayers at night. That's the best time. Them prayers at night be hitting, hitting. I'm talking about we don't miss, hitting. Okay. By the way, this is a quick little commercial break. If you have not joined our prayer community, what are you waiting on? Go to standwithgod.co and go ahead and register your email. I want to see you a part of the prayer community, right? Where our corporate prayer is coming up June 1st. All right. Example of fearful obedience is Exodus chapter 1, verse 17. This was when the midwives, listen, there was under a decree to get rid of them children. And it said that the midwives feared God instead. And so that's what you call obedience, even if you are afraid. All right. Um, Philippians 2 verse 12 from 12 to 13 says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling because God works in you to will and to act. All right. Now, we're going into the next part. When you have teared down the altar, I want you to understand. Remember that I said the altars they know things. They're holding familiar spirits. Not there's also the altar of the Lord that showed you in Revelation chapter 16. But the altars that I'm talking about that is speaking against people's life or that doesn't want a family line to move forward, right? Or particular people in the family to move forward, they are operating out of familiar spirits, right? And so and those familiar spirits follow the bloodline, they follow the family line. So this is a reason why they are able to know when to manifest, when to come on the scene, when to start, acting in a titsy until somebody stands up to says no more. We're shutting it down. I want you to know when altars are torn down in a family, the people who are not walking with God and they're operating out of familiar spirits or they're operating out of whatever that they're operating out of, they know, they absolutely know the spirits that are servicing those altars will know. And so number 11 is to be prepared to war back against it because they're coming. All right. Now, how does this look? This looks like they will try to intimidate the closest ones to you. So, whenever a person is overcoming something that was heavily regarded or heavily protected in the family line, how it will come about spiritually is you'll begin to seem like you'll start getting warfare with the people that are closest to you. So this sometimes could be your parents, this sometimes could be a spouse, this sometimes could be siblings, this sometimes could be particular family members that you were really, really close to. This sometimes can be friend, right? And so what they'll do is they'll try to intimidate the ones that are closest to you. This also could look like the warfare can look like all of a sudden now you're starting to have self-doubt. You're starting to get burned out. You're starting to possibly lose sleep. You're starting to stress. You're starting to have thoughts of uncertainties. You're starting to have, it seem as if you or physically it will look like loss of support from your family, loss of support from your close one out of nowhere. But I want you to look at something. I want you to look at something. And Gideon and Judges chapter 6 verses 31, when Gideon tore down the altar, of course, they found out. They knew. The whole city, the whole city went looking for him. And when they found out who did it, they went it was so interesting that they went to the Gideon's father and they didn't go directly to Gideon. And when they went to Gideon's father, I thought that was so fascinating that Gideon's response was, if Baal is a god, because that's what we've been doing here, right? If Baal is a god, shouldn't he defend himself? Why don't y'all let him defend himself? If he is all powerful, if he's truly a god, how did the altar get destroyed? Shouldn't he have protected it? Shouldn't he have to defend himself? I thought that was so fascinating. And so, what that showed me is that the veil that was over Gideon's father's eyes was lifted. It was lifted. The city erupted. Why did they go to Gideon? Why did they not go? They didn't go to Gideon. They went to Gideon's father. Remember, Gideon tore down, it was his father's altar. That was his family's altar. He was not a part of that nonsense. And they went to Gideon, father, and not to Gideon. And look at Gideon's father's response. But it was always so. I believe that it was always the fulfillment of the Lord. Why do I say that? The reason why I say that is Gideon's father's name was Joash. Joash, I believe Joash. And Joash means given by God. Not only do look at what his name signify, right? He was a Ebrazite. And Ebrazite means my father is help. So his lineage mean my father is help. This is so good. This is so good. So I want you to understand that prepare yourself, but gird yourself up in God. Number 12, you will win the war. After you have won the war against intimidation, because this is how it's going to look. It's going to seem like you get intimidation out of nowhere, whether it's close to you or whether it's people that is familiar with your bloodline. You will get hate. You will get a war of words. Now, when it comes to the war of words, please, 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 every war of words you shall condemn. Every war of utterances you shall condemn. Every war of character assassination you shall condemn through what? Prayer. The Lord will empower you and allow you to blow the trumpet of victory, because you will see after you have won the war, one by one, people in your family line or in your bloodline will leap and overcome the obstacle. So for you, it was a full-on war. But once you win the war, you'll notice one by one in your family line or in your bloodline, people will leap and overcome the obstacle. How does this look like? After you'll start to see kids are coming back in the bloodline. After you'll see marriages starts to come back. After you, you'll see businesses. After you, you'll see people little by little, one by one. They're being more they're stewarding their finances better. They're getting to the money. They're holding on to the money. The money is not being squandered. One by one, you'll see people are graduating. People are going to college. One by one, people are getting into prosperous careers, or people are opening up businesses or buying businesses one by one. Remember, you are freeing yourself and members through the Lord. Now, um, Gideon had to overcome. Gideon, his fight was a little bit different, because it wasn't just after he went past his family and he was able to free his family, he had to then go free generations of families, right? And so everybody's grace is different. Some people, God has assigned them to not only free their family, but to free generations of family. So that is something completely different. But I just wanted to show you guys, and an example of that is Moses. Moses was freeing a generation of families. Esther was freeing a generations of family. So it's okay if God is just using you to one by one, after he deals with you one by one, to deal with certain people in your bloodline, right? And some people, it's beyond that. Everybody assignment is different. I just want you to understand that you can overcome the family altars. You can overcome what was seemed like it could never be destroyed. You can leap over bounds that seems like it had stationed itself, and that it seemed like the people before, the ones who did try to address it, that they could not prevail against it. I'm here to let you know, and I want you to declare and prophesy over yourself that you can leap over bounds, you can overcome the obstacles, and you can destroy the family altars that is not allowing the family to prosper, the bloodline to prosper, or the bloodline to dedicate themselves back to the Lord. Guys, I hope you guys watch the replay. I hope you do. Hope you watch the replay. I hope you have taken some notes. I want to build up a community that take notes. We're doing this together. All right. I love you guys. Until the next one.